Capitola, come to the coast with me. The sun and the sky are free. We'll play in the sand and sea. Capitola, paradise you'll adore. I'll take your hand there on the sand along the shore.
I'm here with Ted. Thanks so much, Ted, for being part of the Capitola Memories Project.
Well, you're welcome.
This time, we're not only going to talk a little bit about Capitola, but also some about Soquel history as well. And what year were you born?
1929 in Santa Cruz, the old Hanley Hospital on West Cliff Drive, which is no longer there.
Wasn't that across from where the Dream Inn is today?
Uh-huh. It's a parking lot now, where the hospital was.
Tell me a little bit about your family history in the area.
Well, this goes back to Joshua Parish, 1849, in Soquel. He came here from Ohio, I believe, and bought some land and started growing potatoes and sold them in the gold rush. And then he went back to Ohio and got married and brought his wife back out here and started having the family. And one of his daughters was Anna Jane Parish, and she married a man named Ed I. Wyman. And so my grandmother came from that marriage, and that was Laura Wyman Maddock. And my father was her son, and Laura Wyman married John Maddock, and then my dad was their son. And then in 1929, I came along.
And what was your dad's name?
Edmund Wesley Maddock. And the Wesley came from Ed I. Wesley Wyman, his grandfather.
And so you were born, you said, in Santa Cruz. Where did you grow up? Were you living in Soquel?
Yeah, my parents lived in Soquel. Mm-hmm. I've always had a problem with that. I think because I'd rather be born in Soquel. but so it's kind of a little trade-off. My first home was in Soquel, down on Center Street, next to, which is also now part of a parking lot.
Was it just a house by itself, or was it part of a farm or something?
No, it was on a corner lot of Parish Lane and Center Street, which had been a cherry orchard. And it was just a little one-bedroom house. And the Wyman house was there on Main Street, facing Main Street. And that was my great-grandfather on my dad's mother's side. And there were some other business. There was a Shell station on the corner of Soquel Drive and North Main Street. And the church was there where it is still. Uh-huh. So that's where I came home, first place I knew.
What sort of work did your father do?
He was an automobile mechanic. There was a garage called Cunnison Brothers Garage and Ford dealership in Soquel at the corner of Old San Jose Road and Soquel Drive. So he was a mechanic there for a long time. And so we moved into Santa Cruz when I was 8 years old, and I lived about 2 years with my mother's mother. And then my dad got a job here in Watsonville with the Union Ice Company, and that's what brought us over to Watsonville.
So did you go to school at all in Soquel? Or?
Yeah, I started the first grade at Soquel Grammar School in the first grade, and then until I was halfway through the third grade, and then that's when we moved into Santa Cruz. And I went to Galt School in Santa Cruz to the end of the fourth grade, and that's when we moved to Watsonville.
Did you attend Watsonville High School?
I went to Minnie White E.A. Hall Grammar Schools and then Watsonville High School.
You still know some of the people you went to first grade with, is that
Right,
correct?
yeah. Dick Nutter, Frank Hill, and Frank Beccaria, who is no longer with us.
Is that the same school that's there now? That's not the real old school, is it?
Well, the one that's out facing Porter Drive is the old school. There are pictures of it, which my grandmother attended, I think, but that was torn down before I was born.
Well, how was Soquel different from the way it is now, back then in the 30s when you were there?
It's a lot different. I used to walk to school from my house on Center Street, across the bridge, and to Porter Street, and then down Porter Street. And the bridge was only 2 cars wide then, if it were not 4 like it is now. And at 6 years old, I would do that with some other kids too. We'd all walk and back to home for lunch, and then back to school for the rest of the afternoon.
What kind of jobs did you have when you were young?
Well, I didn't have any jobs probably till I was like 14. And by that time we lived in Freedom.
Okay.
Here next to Watsonville. And across the street from where we lived was a truck gardener who had land across out Freedom Boulevard, what's so-called now. And I used to go, I worked for him on pulling carrots and windfall apples and stuff like that. That was my first ever job.
Oh, do you remember how much you were paid?
Well, there was, for the carrots, you'd pull some carrots out of the ground and bang them against each other, knock the dirt off, and put about 5 or 6 of them in a bunch with a twist them around it. And when I got 12 of those, that was 10 cents.
I see.
And then a little bit, I worked for, when it was some other crop that you couldn't do like that, I think it paid me 50 cents an hour or something like that.
Well, tell me a little bit about some of your connections to Capitola, and you said you remember the old Capitola airport.
Right. Well, I remember my mother used to take me down into Capitola Village, and I think we would wait in the mouth of the Soquel Creek. I guess we could do that. I look at pictures now, and it looks pretty formidable for a 4 or 5 year old kid to wade in the creek there. But that's one thing. And then at the airport, my dad would take me out there occasionally to watch the airplanes fly. And one time there was a Martin B-10 bomber, Army bomber, and it landed at that airport. And it was kind of a big thrill. It was typical painted in yellow and blue colors like they used to do before the war. This would have been around 1935, I think. And so years later, I thought all of my life after that I'd seen this airplane there, but I got to be a little doubtful. And one time, Russell Rice was the guy that ran the airport back then.
Yes.
His wife Esther came to the Soquel Pioneer Picnic one day, and I got talking to her about it, and I brought that up, and I said, "Did that really happen?" He said, "Oh, yes." She says, "I've got a picture of my husband standing in front of that airplane with a friend of his." And I says, "I'll send you a copy of it. So if you want, I can show it to you."
Yes, show it to me.
Unfortunately, it's not a very good photograph. So that's Russell Rice. And the bomber, there's the belly of it, and the wheel, I think.
I see.
And this is That's what it really looks like.
I see that. Well, that's a pretty big plane. I didn't know anything that big could
Yeah,
land at
it's-
Capitola.
My dad took me to the airport other times, but that was the biggest event that happened when I was in. Then later, after I lived in Watsonville and I was into building model airplanes and U-control models and flying them, and one time there was some kind of a competition at the airport there in Capitola, and I remember going over there flying my U-control models.
Wow.
This was in high school time for me.
Now, how did that work? Did it was it radio controlled, or did
No.
it have a wire on it?
It had two wires, and inside the airplane was a little bell crank, they call it, and it would, as we would move the wires, it would move the elevator up and down, and so the plane went around in a circle,
I see.
and then you could make it go up and down. You could do loops with it,
Ah,
or what they call wing over, so you just fly from here and then go up like that and come back down. So,
and what powered the motor?
gasoline. Yeah, it was a spark ignition gasoline engines of various sizes.
Must have been a pretty small gas engine. How big was the plane?
Anywhere from 12-inch wingspan to 40-inch wingspans, or larger even, you know. And, so they're a lot of fun.
I'll bet. Yeah, that's how. Did you do other activities at Capitola ever? Did you ever go fishing or anything like that?
No, we went fishing in Soquel Creek, my dad and I. And we'd go in from Aptos. Oh, no, that was the Aptos. We also fished in Aptos Creek. But yeah, while I was a kid, it just myself or with another friend would go down to the creek right in Soquel and fish there, and behind people's houses, and just walk by. I had friends who lived on Main Street, and we could just go down past their house and get in the creek that way. Or my grandfather Maddock, they lived on South Main Street on the opposite side from the creek. But I could get down to the creek from that too, and we'd fish in there. So.
And what did you catch?
Well, we always call them trout, but I think they were silver-side salmon fingerlings. In those days, you could take 25 fish in a day. Don't think I ever caught 25. Yeah.
How big were they?
Well, about 3 to 4 inches long.
Oh, little tiny ones then. Now you were connected in some way to Maddock's Bakery, right?
He was a cousin of mine. He was like my father's generation. That was Harold Maddock, and he was the son of my grandfather's brother, and also related to Margaret Lake. Margaret was Margaret Maddock Lake, and he bought the bakery from someone else that was already in existence when he bought it in around 1935 or something like that, and ran it all the way. Well, when World War II came along, he closed the bakery and went in the Navy as a baker.
Oh.
Yeah. And when he got out of the Navy, his wife had maintained the lease on the bakery property, which was, I think it was part of the Oddfellows building that was on Main Street.
Could be.
Next to Porter Street. And so after he came out of the Navy, he opened up again and started selling pastries and bread and stuff. And he had a bread label, so he made bread and had a delivery truck and was delivering it around to grocery stores too. But then around 1952, he sold it to someone else, but who kept the name
for
quite a while until I guess they sold it to someone else, and And then or maybe, I guess they closed down with still having the Maddock name on it.
I remember it in the 1960s and 70s. My mother used to buy her bread there all the time and cakes. And do you have one of the mirrors? You know those little mirrors?
I think I do. I forgot about that.
Was that your relative who started that, or was that later?
The mirror? Well, no,
Yeah.
I think it had his name on it while he was... It came from some collection of my grandparents or something like that. I think.
Yeah, it was a little mirror that had a calendar on the back, and then it said, turn this over to meet a friend of ours or something like that.
Right, that's what it said. Yeah, that was, I remember that.
I'm sure I still have one somewhere.
Yeah, I do too.
Now, you've been involved for many years with the Soquel Pioneers, correct?
Right. I don't really remember when I first started. I knew about it because my grandmother was one of the founders, Laura Maddock. But I didn't start getting involved with them until probably in the 1970s, I think. I still lived in San Jose.
So you grew up, you went to high school in Watsonville, and tell me a little bit more about your life after that and how you got involved with signs and graphic arts.
Well, I graduated from Watsonville High School in 1947, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And one day I was driving out Freedom Boulevard, and there were some guys up on ladders in a plank painting a sign on a building. And I said, hey, that looks like fun work. So I went around town to see if I could get an apprentice, and nobody was hiring. But one of them said, what you ought to do is go over to Hartnell College, and there's a guy over there in the art department that's really good, and he knows about lettering, and he worked in a sign shop when he was in college, and so that's what I did. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life, was to get with that guy. His name was Leon Amix. And so I went 2.5 years to Hartnell. I learned some lettering from him, and then it got me, I took every art course that was offered at Hartnell. And I got the watercolor bug from there too, and so I've been painting watercolors ever since 18 years old. And so then I finished Hartnell and still didn't have a job for a while, and I finally got a job with a sign painter here in Watsonville. And worked for him for about 2 years, I guess, and then I got kind of antsy, and I wanted to go a little bit more beyond sign painting or something. I thought maybe I could become a art teacher and paint watercolors all the time. And so I quit my sign job and went to San Jose and enrolled at San Jose State, and because I had the associate degree from Hartnell, but I didn't have a 3-year degree. And I thought maybe I'll get that. I'll get a 4-year degree and be either an art teacher or a graphic designer. Neither one of which happened. I went back to sign painting again in San Jose and went and got a job downtown because I was running out of money, and so I had to do that. And so I've been a sign painter ever since, and the graphic design was something I would do occasionally. And in watercolor, I kept on painting watercolors for a long time too. I haven't painted a lot lately, though. So.
Well, you've done the annual flyer, right, to announce the Soquel Pioneers picnics?
I was just collecting them. Someone suggested that they should have a collection of, because I've got a lot of them. I think back to 1984. Because I think I might have done some before that, but I don't have a copy of any of them. But no, I did. I sat down and put the collection that I have together and copied it, made sure I had copies. So I got to put together a set for the Soquel Pioneers, so they'll have that.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah. And they run from totally hand lettered ones, kind of fast lettering. But well, I started doing that before computers, and so then I guess there might have been a time when I had typeset for parts of it and pasted it in with some hand lettering too, and then now they've been all computer.
Now, how was that, doing your kind of work to make the transition to computerized signs and designs?
I jumped on it as soon as I saw it.
That was exciting, eh?
Yeah. The first machine was something called a Gerber 4B, and all it was really a plotter with a little basic computer built into it. It didn't have a monitor. It didn't have any memory. And if I wanted to, and I could take a knife blade, which would cut vinyl to make the lettering, or you could take the blade out and put in a pen point, and you could draw it on paper. And if you wanted to see how it looked full size and everything, you had to draw it on paper, and then go back and replace the knife in and then cut it in vinyl. And you would want to do that to make sure before you cut vinyl and ruin all of it. You'd do that, and because you had to do it right away, all in the same time frame, because if you turned the machine off, it lost all what you had put into it. And I went along with that for about 5 years, and then there was a man here in Watsonville that was writing a program for Apple computers to talk to plotters.
Oh.
And he learned that I had one of these Gerber machines, and he wanted to come over, and he got a hold of me and came over and brought up a computer and a little board that he put inside of my machine, hooked it up inside the plotter, and started typing stuff into it and doing things. And I said, wow, I gotta have this. So I went out and borrowed some money and bought a computer and a monitor, and that was all at first, just the computer and the monitor, and ran it through the Gerber machine. And there was a way I could do it like that, and now I could see what I was designing. I could see it on a monitor, and make adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And finally, I thought, I think I need something more. So I went and bought a real computer. So I've been that way ever since. Well, I know what I was starting to mention, that I could use the computer to design with and run it through the Gerber machine and cut it out with that. But I could also use the Gerber like it was designed for, just with no computer, only the computer that it had in it. And it only had 12 fonts. I mean, it only came with one font, of all things. If you bought new ones, they were $250.
Yikes.
So one font was on a card about that big. And so that wasn't very good. It cost too much.
Well, you've seen a lot of changes in that field.
I have a thing on the wall that I got out of a magazine down in my studio. It's a drawing board with the paper stuck to it on one side, and then a computer with a mouse on the other side of it. And it said the caption for it is "From Hand to Mouse." And so I put that up. That just kind of fit my career at that point.
Yes, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and then of course Photoshop came along and all this stuff, and got a scanner and all this stuff. So it's been a lot of fun. I just love the computer. A lot of guys were really skeptical of them, and they hated them, when they first came out. But I just jumped on it.
Going back a little bit to the World War II era, you obviously were too young to have served in the war, but do you have some recollections of what the area was like during the war, blackouts or things like that?
Yeah, we had blackouts. My dad was still working at the Union Ice Company, and they had some kind of paper, I guess, that they would line the lettuce boxes with, because he was working out in Parish at the ice plant, they called it, and it was next to the lettuce sheds, and that was making ice for the railroad cars, because they didn't have refrigerator cars yet. They would just dump these big cakes of ice in the top of in a hatch from the top of the railroad cars. So he took some of that paper, because it was laminated and it had a dark film in. So he made a frame to fit our windows and stretched this paper on it, and that were our blackout windows. Oh. And the highlight for me at that time, again, going back to airplanes, they built that airport out there while I lived there. And
this is what's now the Watsonville Airport? Okay.
Yeah, and according to the story I heard, the city of Watsonville had bought land to build an airport. But when the war came along, the Navy learned about that, and they came to Watsonville and made a proposal, and they bought that land and a little bit more that the city didn't own at the time. So, and I was going to the school. It was called Rhodes School. It was right across Airport Boulevard, which was not called that then, from the airport construction. So all night long and all day long they were building that airport, and then that was another one of the best things that happened to me. They built an airport in my backyard. And so it was all Navy carrier type airplanes, fighter planes and dive bombers and torpedo bombers, and then we could sit out the end of my street or off the fence in my backyard and look out to the runway. It caused our street to be a dead-end street when they built it. So they built a barrier at the end of the street. We could sit there or on my backyard fence and watch. When we'd see airplanes that had obviously been overseas, and they had little Japanese flags painted on the side that represented a kill when they were out there fighting and stuff like that. Yeah, I was 16 when the war ended. I think I was a junior in high school.
Did you see any blimps?
Yeah, they were around. Yeah, they were out at what they call the old Watsonville Airport on Salinas Road, across from the golf course. That's the picture over here. This one. Yes.
Well, I didn't know there was an earlier airport here.
Yeah. It was, where the golf course is on Salinas Road?
Yes.
It was kind of across the street from there, this place. And so that's the Navy took that over and put the blimps out there, and that's where that comes from.
What about, there was rationing during the war, right?
There was rationing for gasoline and silk stockings and meat, sugar. It had either little coins or little paper certificates, I guess. They all had a value or something, but they had to pay money along with those coins or paper.
I didn't know about the coins. I've seen the ration books. The Capitola Museum has some in its collection.
Yeah, the coins weren't they weren't metal. They were fiber of some kind, laminated fiber material. And also during the war, Watsonville High School, a couple of years that I was there, they started school in July and let it out in August sometime, or September, so the kids could go work in the crops because they were short-handed for agricultural labor.
Oh.
So that was kind of a unique thing.
So the school was out during like apple picking season, that sort of thing.
Right. It kind of interfered with the sports too, because we didn't get to play football with the league or any sports. Well, it was football season. Is when anyway. Was when that was. So, but they only did it for 2 years. So it was also to save money on buses and the maintenance and all that stuff. So.
You mentioned sports. Did you enjoy sports as a kid? I liked
sports. I wasn't really an athlete. I was too small for that. But I played interclass. We had, as a substitute for that, we had interclass sports, and each class had a team. So I was like 90 pounds, and my guy across from me on the football field was 190 pounds. So I didn't get to play it very much, but I loved football and still do. So.
Now I noticed in this house in Watsonville, I noticed a few little cracks. Are those left over from the earthquake?
Yeah, this house.
Right.
Yeah, you can see right up there some. Yeah, I never got around to. I didn't want to put up a messing, having my house all messed up.
Well, they're little mementos of the earthquake.
Yeah.
I think we all have a few of those in our houses.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you if you remember at all the Lodge sisters who lived in Soquel.
Oh yeah, I do. I guess this was about after I'd moved to Watsonville. My mother's mother, who lived in Santa Cruz, went out and spent the apple season, I guess, at Nutter's, or I don't know if they still own it, but the apple processing plant on it was Capitola Avenue, I think, isn't it? Where the Lodge House is.
Yes.
Yeah, she rented a room from Julia Lodge while she stayed and worked at that place. Yeah, and I got to meet them. I guess it was Julia that was there, I think. So that's. But then I know the history of all the lodges and all that stuff, too.
That was so. She worked at the apple dryer. Was that?
I guess it was an apple dryer. Yeah. And she stayed with Lodge, Mrs. Lodge. Actually, Julia Lodge was a granddaughter of Martina Castro, I think, right?
I think so. We'll have to check on that.
Those three sisters. There were three sisters because the little plaque that's on the barbecue pit at the Pringle Grove. They donated $3,000, and that's what they used it for, to build that barbecue. And that's what they wanted on the plaque, was dedicated to their grandmother and the three sisters.
One of the things I remember as a child and participated in was the Soquel-orama. Was you ever involved in that?
No, I think my grandparents were, but I was away from there. What years were those?
That would have been in the early 60s.
Okay, yeah. No, I was in San Jose then. So I was in San Jose for 27 years, so I missed a lot of stuff. Although I kept in touch kind of with some people.
How long did your parents live there in Soquel?
Well, we moved to Santa Cruz first from the Soquel house and with my other grandmother. And at the end of the 4th grade, that's when my dad got the job with the Union Ice Company. And so I didn't want to change schools again right then. And so they moved to Watsonville and left me with my grandmother. And so I finished the 4th grade at Galt and then moved over to Watsonville. So that was in 1939, I think.
Did you have some relatives, though, who continued to live in the Soquel and Capitola area?
Yeah, there was, of course, my grandparents, and my dad's brother, and his sister, She lived in Capitola on an apartment on San Jose Avenue, I think. And then, of course, Harold Maddock from the bakery, and Lloyd and Ann Pringle, they were there. Cedola Duff was a cousin. Interesting thing. She's about the same age as my father, but she was the first cousin to my grandmother, to his mother. So she was kind of a late child.
I remember Cedola Duff. I met her a few times.
Yeah.
She was very active with the local history.
Oh yeah, she was involved with the pioneers, and her house is still there on the corner of Parish Drive and Main Street. It's on that corner, and I just wonder who. She had some sisters that were out of town. She went to college in. I guess she went to Cal. But she got a teaching job in the valley, and met a guy over there and married him, and so who lived over there. So she had a lot of connections with the San Joaquin Valley.
Well, my grandmother used to say that you never ever want to say anything bad about somebody in Soquel because they're all related.
Well, I had a lot of relatives when I was a kid there, yeah.
Well, you mentioned a lot of well-known Soquel names, Parish and Pringle and...
Right. And Pringle, he was connected. Well, he was not a blood relative. He was married into family. So, but his interesting, Dick Nutter's second wife, who used to come to the Pioneer Picnic a lot, she was part of the Pringle family in some way. I don't know exactly. But Lloyd Pringle was part of the Anthony family. Elihu Anthony, is that the name?
Oh yes, I know of that family from Santa Cruz.
Yeah, he was part of that family, I think. And also, and his middle name was Sturdivant, I think. Is that a name, a Santa Cruz history name?
Well, I went to school with some of them.
Yeah, so.
High school.
I didn't, he's kind of an aloof guy, Lloyd Pringle. I didn't know quite.
Wasn't he the postmaster?
Yeah, he was postmaster pretty much through the 1930s, I guess. And that's another thing I remember. This is not Capitola's history, but I have a picture. James Farley came on a trip. I guess it was when he was running for president. After maybe, I think he ran against Roosevelt in the second or third term or something.
Oh.
But he came and he went and stopped off at the post office, and they let us out of school to go over there. It was on the corner of North Main Street and Freedom Boulevard, across from the service station that's there now.
Or probably North Main and Soquel.
North Main and Soquel, yeah, on the north side. Yeah, north side.
Mm-hmm. Well, I notice you have all this. These jazz items on the wall here. I take it you like jazz?
Oh yeah. When I was 17 years old, I got the bug, and I was still in high school. I was 17. I was a senior in high school, and after school every day, I would turn the radio on, and there was a program. It wasn't really a jazz program, but it was pop music of the 40s, and I listened to this music, and I started collecting records about that time too. 78 RPM, we got a whole bunch of them down there. I still got them, and then once in a while I would be like Benny Goodman. They'd play something by Benny Goodman or Peggy Lee, and some other guys and women. And I thought, that's just different than the rest of the stuff they're playing. There's something about this music that's different, it's better. And so, then I started paying attention more, and I found a Metronome magazine or a Downbeat magazine and started reading and learning about that, and I went from there. And ever since, I've been collecting jazz music.
Did you ever get to hear some of the live performances
Oh,
in
yeah.
the area?
Yeah, almost all of the big guys, Benny Goodman, Gene Krupa, Artie Shaw, Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Dave Brubeck, all the caliber of people, top international, top drawer people.
And did some of them come to places in Santa Cruz County?
Yeah, I can remember going to the dance hall in Capitola. It was right where the old hotel used to sit, next to the theater, called Saba. I think it was called Saba. The Harry James Band came there once, and maybe another one, and then Lionel Hampton came to the Watsonville Auditorium, which was down where the fire stations are now, but that building is not there anymore. And then one of my big highlight, and I almost can't believe it, a band called Charlie Ventura, the biggest little bebop band in the world, it was called. He came to the Watsonville Veterans Memorial Building.
Oh.
And you probably, if you're not into jazz, you won't know their names, but Jackie Kane and Roy Kroll, their husband and wife singing team, and she played piano and they both sang. They both played piano and sang, I guess. And and I told Kathy about this thing. I was about 20 or 21 years old. It's a concert in San Francisco, and I went to and got Louis Armstrong's autograph.
Wow.
In a little club in Ellis Hotel, in I don't know what they call the district. It was an African American neighborhood, at the time. And so, yeah, but the music's changed, and it's not quite the same people aren't here anymore. Yeah.
Everything keeps changing.
Yeah. I went to, I learned about Coomba Jazz Center about in 1979, I guess. And so I've gone there for many, many concerts, and they've had a lot of great people there, too. And of course, when I got to San Jose, living in San Jose, I got to see a lot of jazz people up there.
Well, that's a little bit bigger city. So,
right.
Did you ever go? Well, you mentioned you went clear to San Francisco, I guess, on occasions.
Yeah, and I went to other places like the Black Hawk and different clubs around San Francisco to hear people. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ted.
Okay.
This has been wonderful, and you've shared a lot of interesting things.
I hope you liked it. I didn't know how it was going to be.
Well, you never know where these conversations are going to go.
Right.
We ended up over here talking about things in Watsonville as well, but that's great.
Okay.
Capitola, come to the coast with me. The sun and the sky are free. We'll play in the sand and sea. Capitola, paradise you'll adore. I'll take your hand there on the sand along the shore. Capitola, over the bridge we'll go. We'll capture the sunset glow and wait for the creek to flow. Capitola, sway to the ocean's roar. Beside the strand we'll hear the band down by the